On today's podcast, I run into somebody and say, hey, how you doing? The first word back is busy. We're talking about why investing time beats managing time every single day. What truly deserves our focus, our attention, and our heart in our life and work? What is it? And do we intentionally invest time in those items? Stay tuned, and we're going to dive into this topic, which is investing time. Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everybody, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast, wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today. Welcome in. So glad you are here. We're at Season 8, well over 230 episodes in the podcast, and continues to be great energy, mojo. Thanks to all the listeners out there, every single one of you out there, anybody who has commented or shared or reached out to say, hey, this really resonated with me. Thank you to everybody out there, and welcome to all the new listeners, anybody who's joining us for the first time. I hope you'll go back and listen to old episodes and find topics. There's so many great topics and thought leaders and so many great things. Just check out all of the catalog at this point. And those of you that have been with us from the very beginning, thank you. So glad you're here, and so glad this continues to be a place to kind of breathe oxygen into you and be a place for you to kind of step back. My promise to you is I want this to always be a place for you to be able to step back from your life and your work, to think, to be filled with some thoughts and some things that engage your mind and heart and help you think about that temperature that you're trying to set in your life and your work, and how can you intentionally be that kind of thermostat for that future that you're trying to create. So I know that we need this as humans, but also teams and organizations need more intentional leaders that are thoughtful about the culture they're creating with the people around them. So thanks to everybody, and my hope is that this will continue to be that for you. Before we dive into today's episode, if you'll do me the quick favor, of course, rate the podcast 5 stars on whatever platform you're on. That's a hugely helpful thing. So just please, if you are willing to do that, hit the 5 stars. Just tap it. Boop, boop, boop. Tap it. And then that was a great sound effect, by the way. And then leave an authentic review, your own words, whatever it is that you can share about a topic that resonates with you. Those are 2 ways in which it just helps the algorithms help share it and find people that are interested in these topics. So thanks to everybody that does that. And obviously anybody who shares the podcast, with your team at work, hey, let's listen to this. Let's, talk about the questions, shares it on social media or with people that you think it'll resonate with. All of those ways are ways in which these messages grow, and I'm grateful for everybody that takes the time to do this. You've heard me say this before, but the phrase that I hear more than ever when I walk into any team and organization, but I also hear it in the grocery stores, in the coffee shops, is when I run into somebody and say, hey, how you doing? The first word back is busy. And you've heard me talk about that we do this song and dance where we both say we're busy. And, maybe it's because we really do. Again, I know we all have a lot going on in our lives, but it also kind of becomes a filler. And we say it because if we say that we're just busy, then we don't really need to share anything of significance with one another. We can just say, you're busy, I'm busy, and then go about our separate ways. And we don't need to really share anything. But we perpetuate this idea of being busy. And when I'm working with teams and organizations and helping them think about their own leadership and developing people and thinking about the proactive, what is the culture that we're trying to create in the future for our organization, and clarity around mission, vision, and values, busyness, this idea of busyness and distractions are often what pull us away from being the type of leader and creating the type of culture that we want and that will compel other people to be a part of it. And so oftentimes you'll hear, and I'm sure if you stop and listen to people in your life or certainly across your team or your organization at work, you'll hear people that always are saying, yeah, I'd love to, but I just never have the time. I never have the time. Well, when am I going to find the time? And yet what's so interesting is with many of the teams and organizations that I serve, I put them through exercises where we step back to look at the way that we are, quote unquote, spending our time. And we do a little audit of ourselves. And one of the things that people often realize is that this idea that I never have time is not always true. It's how we might be investing that time is leaving very little in the margins for us then to do the things, new things, or do the things that actually are higher priorities. And so you've heard me talk about this idea that we as humans are often busy, but we're not really effective. But yet we've come to honor this term busyness. And unfortunately, in our minds, sometimes we equate busyness to equal effectiveness, but it's absolutely not true. And so we continue to learn that in quite distracting, busy, and divisive times, we know that there are many strains on our time and on our schedules, and we're overscheduled in so many ways that means it's even more important to think about where and how are we investing our time. And so managing time and investing time are two different styles and approaches. So managing time would just be that I am kind of reactionary, reacting to my day and my schedule and the things that people need from me. And I'm always kind of just managing my day as it comes to me. But rather than just managing my time, I choose to believe, especially the most effective style in this very busy world, is to say, hold on, not just can I manage my time, but where and how am I investing my time? And investing time always beats managing time. Investing time always beats managing time. Investing time is about engaging our mind and heart in the most important elements in life and work right now, the things that are happening right now, that invests in a brighter future. But I know we live in a world of distractions where it's often easier to spend our time in the non-important and non-urgent space, filling time rather than investing time and just kind of managing our time. So on today's podcast, we're talking about why investing time beats managing time every single day. What truly deserves our focus, our attention, and our heart in our life and work? What is it? And do we intentionally invest time in those items? So stay tuned, and we're going to dive into this topic of managing time, or should we do what beats it every time, which is investing time. But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference, or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Investing time beats managing time every single day. So I do an exercise with many of the teams and organizations that I serve as we're looking at it through the lens of leadership development or helping people look at how can they be more effective and productive in their day, and how can they be a more compelling leader, and how can they better serve and contribute their gifts to the culture. We often do an exercise that I talk about this idea of investing time rather than managing time. And I use the Eisenhower Matrix as one of the central images, which I'm sure you've seen it before, even if you don't know it's referred to as the Eisenhower Matrix. But it's a square, and there are four quadrants. And, the four quadrants are broken down this way. They're on the left-hand side of the box, the top left, quadrant in the four-box quadrant is labeled urgent but not important. Urgent but not important. The lower left hand is not urgent and not important. And then on the right side of the quadrant, the upper box is urgent and important. And then the bottom right hand quadrant is not urgent but important. And so we use this again, and if you can imagine this visual, we'll put an image of it in the show notes. But if you can imagine this quadrant, it is easy for all of us to get stuck on the left-hand side of this matrix, which is living in this space of either high urgency, meaning we're putting out fires every single day by just things that come at us. But when we step back and look at the tasks or look at the things that we're doing, they actually aren't all that important. They might feel urgent in the moment, but they're not tied to our highest priorities. And yet we can manage our time by just keeping ourselves busy all day long, by just reacting to these things that seem kind of urgent to other people around us. And even worse than that, the lower left-hand quadrant is not urgent or not important. And some people, we can get tricked into this is the just making the lists, and we like just checking things off the box, checking the box and like moving things off the list, but it's keeping ourselves busy. But as we step back and look at the tasks or the functions or the ways in which we're, again, managing the time, is that none of the things we're doing are urgent. And even worse than that, they're also not important. And so as humans, we can keep ourselves busy and just kind of reactionary managing our time just by staying on the left-hand side of this quadrant all day long. And some humans are stuck in that pattern, and some teams and organizations are also stuck in that pattern. But on the right-hand side of the quadrant, and this is where I'll be Captain Obvious and tell you, the most successful and most effective and most intentional humans, let alone teams and organizations, they bring their focus and their attention to the right-hand side of the quadrant more times than not, which means they absolutely each day are very thoughtful about what are the urgent and important items that they need to give their focus and their attention to first. So what are those things that, yes, have a high level of urgency, there's a timeline to them, and they are tied to our highest priorities? And what are those things that I need to tackle first? And interestingly enough, so the most effective leaders, teams, and organizations spend most of their time in that top right-hand part of the quadrant. But also interestingly is they also very specifically, as you study these teams and organizations and people that are the most effective, they also carve out time to spend in the lower right-hand box of lower right-hand part of the quadrant, which is the not urgent but important space, which is time to step back, to think, to study, to gather as a team and talk about future vision, talk about how we're showing. A lot of the workshops and development and the things that I lead, the conferences that I go to speak at or things like that, these are things that I would consider to fall into that part of the quadrant because they're not urgent, meaning we don't have to do it today. We could do it tomorrow or next week, but they're absolutely important. They're tied to our highest priorities and help us develop for that future that we're trying to create. And so where we end up spending our energy, what we give our eyes, our focus, our heart to, is on the left-hand side of the quadrant is really reactionary kind of managing time versus the right-hand side of the quadrant, which is investing our time in those highest priorities. And investing time beats managing time every single day. So you've heard me share the surfing analogy that so many different places, and I've been telling this story for many years now, and events and companies and organizations continue to ask me to tell that story again, because this idea, this message and this lesson that you learn when you learn how to surf, where the instructor reminds you that where you look is where you go. Where you look, your body will follow. And so it's such a great image and a powerful image, because if we've never lived in a more busy, cluttered, distracted time in the history of the world than we do now, then what we end up giving our focus to, where we invest our focus, our time, our energy, our heart into, is where our bodies end up going. Where we look is where we go. Where we look, our bodies will follow. So if we individually or entire teams or groups of people, spend our time obsessed with negativity, gossip, blame, then where we look is where we go. If we spend it then just into the tasks that are easiest or the putting out of fires that really aren't the highest priorities and steal our attention away from the things that really need our attention, then we end up just managing our time day to day. But if we invest in the people, invest in the mission that's greater than us, in solutions, and invest our mind, our heart, our focus, our time in those areas, then where we look is where we go. Where we look, our bodies follow. And so we know that the most effective and compelling humans, leaders, teams, organizations invest their days, their weeks, their months, their years, and their lives in the most important elements they want to invest in for the future. What's going to get their eyes, their focus, and their attention today? And so the question comes up to all of us each day. It's a question that gets re-asked each day, is are we managing our time or are we investing our time? And where we look is where we go. And investing time beats managing time every single day. So some questions to ponder for today's episode is to invite you to step back and to take an inventory of your average days. Where are you investing your time? And is it just managing time or is it investing time? Take an inventory and look at it. Where is it on that Eisenhower Matrix that you tend to spend most of your days? What more important or urgent elements need more of your investment, of your focus, your mind, and your heart? And what needs less? What are the things that are less important, that aren't urgent? What are those items that maybe we waste a little bit too much energy and time on, that maybe we need to allow ourselves to let go of? And remember, we can either manage time or invest time, and where we look is where we go. So I hope today's episode gave you some things to think about. I hope it gave you a chance to breathe in some appreciation, some gratitude for all that's within our control, where we can invest our heart, our time, our focus, and what we want to give our best energy toward, because we know that calibrating our own personal thermostat starts with recognizing an awareness of ourself, and then what is the actions, the behavioral response that we want to put into motion to set the temperature for the life that we're hoping to create and for the work that we're trying to do in the world. So my hope is that you'll continue to think about these things. I hope you'll keep tuning in. I hope you'll go back and check old episodes and all the great stuff that's out there. And I hope that you will, if you've got an idea, a question for us, or any ways that we can be helpful to your team, your organization, or just a topic that you want us to dive into, I hope you'll email us info@jasonvbarger.com, info@jasonvbarger.com, and let us know your thoughts. And because remember, where you look is where you go. And remember, the best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet, they stimulate progress by recalibrating that thermostat together and then continuing to breathe good oxygen for the path ahead. So step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.